Good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be kicking off today's masterclass with Professor Eduardo Pedreño, who's joining us again, actually. This is a second masterclass we facilitate with Eduardo. And first masterclass was amazing, and I'm sure we're in for a lovely journey with you, Eduardo, today. Eduardo is an expert in digital transformation. He's a professor of innovation and digital transformation at IE Business School. By the way, IE Business School now is ranking #1 in entrepreneurship in Europe. So it's great to see their ranking going up. IE is very big on entrepreneurship. Obviously, digital transformation is a key component. It's not an end game. It's the means, right? It's a path by which you can be more efficient, more responsive, more adaptive. Eduardo has extensive experience working with the private sector, from consultancy like Deloitte to companies like Repsol, all the way to Spanish governments and other governments. He advises on digital transformation strategies. Today, he's going to take us on an hour and a half dive into the best practices for startups, right? So this is a very broad topic, obviously. However, Eduardo will focus it on startups and how you can think about, assess, and adopt strategies so that you can digitally transform. Without further ado, Eduardo, thank you for being with us this morning, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for bringing me back and for the opportunity to talk about this topic, which is very interesting, but also kind of counterintuitive, because you think of a startup and the startups are the one pushing big companies to do digital transformation. And so why does a startup have to worry about digital transformation? That's one of the things when I was discussing the title with Rezek, that one of the things that I was thinking of was, well, it's going to be a little counterintuitive to talk about digital transformation. And then, of course, as you start to analyze what's going on, it makes complete sense to talk about it. And as you'll see, we have references from big companies that want to be startups, and we have references from startups that have failed because they have been unable to turn into a digital company as such. Okay, so the fact that you are a developer or the fact that you have a good idea and a small organization doesn't make you a startup that is digitally transformed. And let's face it, a lot of startups don't make it. A lot of startups fail in the market, and a lot of the times, the reasons why startups fail have more to do with organizational issues, with incapacity to scale, with lots of other reasons that are a problem for a startup. Because, you know, creating a business from scratch, of course, is not easy. But as you grow, you may find yourself in a situation where you cannot handle growth. And I've seen this happen. And I've seen startups fail because one CEO let his ego get in the way of the startup and the business. And you keep seeing things like this, and you realize that many of the principles that are applied in digital transformation make a lot of sense for startups in general. So I'm going to start with a video from an Apple CEO. And I'm going to finish with a video from an Apple CEO. And there's a reason for that, okay? It's because I really, really liked the ideas that are in this video. The first one we're going to see is Steve Jobs. This was probably 11 years ago. And I have used this video extensively in masterclasses and sessions to explain how companies should behave. So let me make sure that you're going to get the audio right.
Keys to Apple is Apple's an incredibly collaborative company. And so, you know how many committees we have at Apple?
No.
0. We have no committees.
No committees.
We are organized like a startup. One person's in charge of iPhone OS software. One person's in charge of Mac hardware. One person's in charge of iPhone hardware engineering. Another person's in charge of worldwide marketing. Another person's in charge of operations. We're organized like a startup. We're the biggest startup on the planet. And we all meet for 3 hours once a week, and we talk about everything we're doing, the whole business. And there's tremendous teamwork at the top of the company, which filters down to tremendous teamwork throughout the company. And teamwork is dependent on trusting the other folks to come through with their part without watching them all the time, but trusting that they're going to come through with their parts. And that's what we do really well. And we're great at figuring out how to divide things up into these great teams that we have and all work on the same thing, touch bases frequently, and bring it all together into a product. We do that really well. And so what I do all day is meet with teams of people and work on ideas and solve problems to make new products, to make new marketing programs, whatever it is.
And are people willing to tell you you're wrong?
Yeah.
I mean, other than snarky journalists. I mean, people that work for you.
Oh, yeah. No, we have wonderful arguments.
And do you win them all? Or?
Oh, no, I wish I did. Oh, see, you can't. If you want to hire great people and have them stay working for you, you have to let them make a lot of decisions, and you have to be run by ideas, not hierarchy. The best ideas have to win.
So,
otherwise, good people don't stay.
But you must be more than a facilitator who runs meetings. You obviously contribute your own ideas.
I contribute ideas, sure. Well, why would I be there if I didn't?
Okay.
All right,
Well, because there are some companies run in a different way. That's
okay. So if you see the amount of ideas that are put forth in just a couple of minutes, it's pretty impressive. Okay. It made a lot of sense that Steve Jobs was where he was. 10 years now since his passing. So keep those ideas. No committees. They try to be as horizontal as possible. They meet every week and see all the parts of the company. They are focused on teamwork and collaboration. And he defines his company as a startup, which I think is very, very interesting, because at this point, Apple was a huge multinational, and it had been for 20 years, 30 years. So, and the growth it experienced since 2001 was very significant. So the fact that you define your company as a startup in itself is a declaration of intentions, okay? That you want to run the company by a certain set of guidelines that make you nimble and agile and so on and so forth. I have found companies, small companies and startups that worked at significantly less speed than Apple, just because of internal conflict, politics and all kinds of organizational missteps. So a startup at the end of the day is nothing but a company, even though it has its own peculiar elements. So what is digital transformation? Well, I'm going to let you read the joke, because this is a super fantastic explanation. The final drawing is the killer one. So good luck on this summer intern. You have to change the whole company. We're facing disruption. We have to embrace new ways of thinking. So we hired an intern for 3 months. So generally, startups have disregarded disregarded digital transformation for a long time. Okay, when we started talking about digital transformation was around 2014, 2015. It was like, well, what have you guys been for the past 15 years or the past 20 years? Okay, because digital transformation has been there all along, but some companies did not take the plunge. So suddenly, when it became a buzzword, suddenly companies were paying attention to it. So this is the framework that I use for digital transformation. The elements that I'm going to cover structuring the presentation are going to be around this. And there's a reason that I keep it this simple. You will find digital transformation components and suddenly you see 15 different things. For me, all of them can be put in just this image. And all the topics are around this four axes, okay? So first of all, the business model is incredibly important. It's the first thing I'm going to talk about. The element of entrepreneurship, if you abandon that, and many startups abandon that element very early on because they don't invest forward in new initiatives, they don't invest forward in product, they have their business model set in stone and they forget about it. If you do that, you have a problem. The cultural and organizational elements are incredibly important when you are a big organization. Okay, changing the culture takes a long time, is very hard, and takes a lot of effort, and you see companies failing at that as well. But in the startup ecosystem, and if you're running a startup or creating a startup, the cultural element becomes so crucial that you have to spend a lot of energy and a lot of time, much more than you think, making sure the culture is respected and the mission of the company stays consistent across the whole organization. And finally, the customer element. So customer experience is absolutely relevant today because you can do a million things that you couldn't do before, and because the customers are demanding it. So if they don't find the type of flexibility they need when interacting with a company, they're going to be frustrated and they're going to leave. So there are different thoughts in the whole presentation around this. I structured the presentation as 20 items of advice that I would give to a startup if they want to be digitally transformed, and if they want to understand changes happening not now but in the future. Okay, because this is not about today, this is about resiliency when things change, when the market suddenly embraces a different paradigm, when you have more competition, when your competition is doing better than you, and the reasons that they may be doing better than you is because they did these things. Okay, so just keep the framework in mind, and I'm gonna break it down into four sections, covering it. So what is the problem with digital transformation in general? This slide was in my other presentation as well, but I put it because I think it very, very clearly communicates what is happening with organizations. So technology changes exponentially, and organizations change logarithmically, which means your rate of change cannot be at the same level as the technology evolving. And it's always going to look like the technology is going faster than your company can, which is true. But you have to decide which elements of that technology are going to benefit you and your business model, and try to adopt those and get the organization on board. So this is one big problem that I see in startups, in companies, in governments, in practically anything that I've interacted with. This is a significant issue. And one other thing that I normally do when I do consulting or when I go to a foreign government, and we try to understand what they're trying to do with their digital transformation, one of the first things I do is analyze the level of maturity that company, that organization has, because depending on what you are, you're going to take measures short, medium, long term to become a more mature company. And very often, you find companies that are not mature enough. You find startups that are not mature enough. The processes and the governance of the developments that are done inside the company, the product development, the level of collaboration inside the company and outside into the market is not good enough. And companies become stagnant very, very quickly if they do that. If you don't evolve towards a level 5 maturity, this is not the framework I use, but it's a very well-known framework on IT. This is a good one though. This explains very clearly the concepts. But the one I use, I've been doing consultancy with organizations that manage millions and millions and millions of euros and dollars in investment, and I put them at level 3, which is what you find out there in the real world. So level 3 is not very high. It's not what I would expect from this type of organization. So first, take a look at your own capabilities. Take a look at your development efforts, your product fit developments. Take a look at the whole of the market, compare yourselves against others, and you're going to see if you are mature enough or not. So that's one thing that we also have to keep in mind, because depending on the level of maturity we have, we're going to do certain things or others, but you cannot run from 1 to 100 in a very short period of time. Okay, particularly with organizations, because the capacity for change is not very high. So business model entrepreneurship. I'm going to start with the advice. Okay, and again, I bring another slide from the previous presentation because this is super important to keep in mind still now. So it's not about disrupt or being disrupted. It's about disrupt and be disrupted. Okay, so the question is not if you're going to be disrupted or not. You are. The question is how you deal with that disruption. Okay, someone can come to the market and can make your offering completely obsolete in a matter of weeks, months, or a very short period of time in years. Okay, 1 year, 2 years. So even if you're a startup and you are starting at the bottom, okay, you are trying to disrupt someone, and you're here. Even if you are here, you have to look below to see if there's someone with a good idea trying to disrupt you. Very often you see startups, they put forth a fantastic initiative, fantastic product. They do all these incredible things, and then suddenly they are disrupted from below. Someone comes in and makes their whole product completely obsolete. If you look at, I like to look at the software space because obviously that's where I'm most comfortable. But if you look at startups that did incredible software that were very, very famous at some point, and how little time they were in the spotlight before someone else came in and put out something better, you would be incredibly surprised. Okay, there's an insane amount of startups that disrupt one another. So you're going to be disrupted. And so you have to be a little paranoid and think about all the ways that you can be disrupted as a company. Now, what happens if instead of being disrupted by a company, you are disrupted by a technology? Well, I like to use this image because this was one of the first disruptions that happened around the year 2000. And if you look at the music revenues, the music industry was on top in the year 2000. They were at the maximum height of their game. And suddenly it started to drop, first because of piracy, then because a company decided they were doing digital content and not the music industry. So what happened? First of all, Apple capitalized a lot of that growth and sales went down, down, down until 2015, 2016. They start to go slightly up. look at the size of the market. It has shrinked by 2/3. Okay. Now, your company could be betting on the wrong technology, could be betting on something that is not going to be mature enough, could be betting on something that is going to be further disrupted further down the line. If you are in the music business at this point in time, it's all hubris. Okay. And I had talks with people in the music industry around this time. Hubris, an insane amount of hubris. The same hubris you could find in the car industry 7 or 8 years ago about Tesla. Tesla, they said, Tesla is a scam. Okay. Tesla is never going to work. Electric cars? Are you kidding me? That's what they were saying just 7, 8 years ago. Look what's going on. Okay. So disrupt and be disrupted. And if that happens and you're not ready, you're out. Okay. So you have to pay a lot of attention to the the signals the market is sending. The business model is not fixed in stone. You have to go back to the drawing board every once in a while, because it's impossible to not evolve your business model. Okay, unless your business model is extremely straightforward. I'm selling this, and it's a very, very simple business model. If you're doing anything that ties in with digital, you have to go back to the drawing board. Why? Because you're selling your product in a certain way. I don't know what way that may be, but you're selling your product in a certain way. Someone's going to come in and sell your product in a different way. Software license. We used to pay for software licenses. Now we pay for software as a service. What's going to happen if tomorrow someone comes up with a new way of delivering products and services? What's going to happen? What I can tell you for sure is going to happen is, if you are betting on technology, prices are going to come down, and you're always going to have low-cost players, because someone's going to make it cheaper, more effective. They're going to find a process that makes it more agile, more streamlined, and so on. So you have to go back to the business model. You have to take your business model canvas and say, okay, something's not working here. What is it? I have to change it. So this is unavoidable. This is what you tell an old company. This is what you tell the big multinational. Now you have to be more nimble. You have to change the business model. And for them, it's extremely hard. When you're a small company, you have some advantage, but that doesn't mean your business model is going to stay profitable just because it is profitable today. Now, what you see a lot of startups do is pivot. Okay, and I'm not going to go into the whole lean startup movement or all of that. I'm sure that's covered in other master classes. But my recommendation is, if you are a digitally transformed startup or a startup that understands digital transformation, always be ready to pivot to a different business model, to a different element of the business model, because reality always puts you in your place. Okay, reality means that you're going to encounter so many things along the way that probably your first contact to the market is not going to be a successful one. Okay, probably, unless you are very good, which sometimes you find startups that are incredibly good. Okay, so one of the things that I did, that I realized, I was director of operations at a company for the first time. That was about 15 years ago. And one of the first things that I realized in operations is you can do a process re-engineering project and completely change the way the company operates, sure, but you do that once, maybe twice in the course of 10 years. What you can do definitely is be 1% better. So one of the things that I did for a couple of years was, okay, we have this system. The system is not working for production. It's not working as we want it to. Let's start improving. Let's start finding ways to improve. So all our work for those 2 years was increase 1% and then increase 1% more. And we have KPIs along the way to inform us, and then increase some more. And at the end, we had to throw out the KPIs we had and get new ones, because we had reached the perfect level of tuning for our system that let us do our work and let us be better. Okay. And this is something I'm going to insist on later on about metrics. So the power of tiny gains. This is Atomic Habits is the book from jamesclear.com. Super interesting read. 1% better every day, 1% better every day is going to mean you are 30 times better by the end of a year. And that is compound interest. So Albert Einstein said compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands earns it, he who doesn't pays it. This is applicable to many things, but it's also applicable to organizational performance. And I think companies have to understand that. Beware of platforms. Why? For one simple reason. Wherever there is friction, there's gonna be a platform. This is not something new. I mean, if you know about platforms, you know that they are everywhere. But think of the ways whatever market you're in could be turned into a platform, and you would be relegated to the background. Okay? Because in the platform capitalizes value, and you are just a player. Okay? You are just on one of the two sides, providing services or selling services through the platform. And wherever there is friction, look for a platform to appear. Where is the friction? Where do you find friction? Everywhere. Okay? We find friction practically everywhere. So you find a market, you're going to find friction, a platform is going to come in. And if that platform aggregates all the players on the platform, first of all, you're going to be forced to go in. And second of all, you're going to be relegated. Okay? So platforms are incredibly important to keep an eye on, and or maybe create, okay, which is another option. I still find, even though platforms have been around for a long time, I still find students at IE that are trying to create new platforms, and it's fascinating because the ideas are endless. Okay, so platforms are very important. It's not just about Facebook and Google and Apple and Microsoft and Amazon. You see an insane amount of platforms in our lives. Just open your phone, probably you have a lot there. And I will talk about the big tech later. Okay, be ready to scale. Now, what is the problem with scalability? We always talk to startups and talk to them about scalability. And I have never seen a startup that was scalable on day one, ever. Okay, so I don't know why we tell them early on about scalability when it's going to take them a while to encounter that scalability. What is the problem that you find with companies trying to scale? I have met entrepreneurs and companies and startups that would tell me, we almost died, okay, as a company because of scalability, because we did not think ahead, okay? We did not prepare. And when things exploded, we had no information systems to run the company. Like, it was also agile, okay, that they had to throw out the system that they had developed because they needed a more expensive, more complete system in terms of functionality, or because the organization didn't react well enough, or because the culture wasn't ready for the scalability, or because you didn't think of scalability in the first place. A lot of times you see this. You see companies that develop incredible technology, but don't develop a scalable product to go along with that technology. And that is a problem that reflects internally, okay, your resources, your suppliers, your employees, and externally, because sometimes the market is going to force you into this, and scalability is not going to be optional. It's either you scale or you die, okay? the competitive pressure is always going to be there. Significant growing pains for startups. So I would look very early on as a manager, which I think management can do can inflict a lot of pain to the organization needlessly, okay? But as a manager, I would look at scalability very early on. I would have a plan for scalability very early on, because whatever plan you have is not going to work out. Okay, so I think it was a US general that said, plans are useless, but planning is everything. It's better to plan ahead how scalability is going to look like, because when you set out to do it, it's going to fail. Okay. Now, whenever I find a startup that attacks a market that is an existing market, you have to think in terms of unbundling and rebundling. And that is one of the great advantages we have with business models today. We can take an existing company in the traditional sense, like Bank of America in this image, and we can break it down into multiple value offers. So that was unbundling. Unbundling happened with music when Apple started selling songs instead of CDs. Okay, so instead of buying the whole CD, you would buy a song, pay $1. That is unbundling. Unbundling is what happened to news. We only look at the news that are interesting for us. So it's the newspaper became an unbundled product. And now unbundling is what happened with Netflix and many of these other companies. And then rebundling, which is another process, which is reallocating the sources of value into different packages, into different offerings. So what did Netflix do? The TV series and all these multimedia content, you could buy them isolated. You could buy them or get them in the market or download them illegally, only the series that you want to watch. What did Netflix do or Spotify do? They took all the content and they put it in a platform. Okay, that is called rebundling. So you want to think in terms of how could this offer be unbundled? How could I break it down so that I only have to assume a certain part of the cost and create something that is incredibly compelling for the market? And you find a lot of these startups doing just that and being very successful. Some fintech startups started just with a debit card, not even a credit card, a debit card and an app. And they went out there, got everybody to sign in and became very successful. So unbundling. And now these same banks that started with just one product, they are reallocating value into their apps and putting all these other offers that have nothing to do with what a traditional bank would do, okay, even though they are banking services. So unbundle, rebundle. That's something that it's worth keeping an eye on and looking at all the elements that you can unbundle, rebundle. So these are the thoughts on business model. Someone's calling at the door. Sorry for the noise. These are the elements for the business model. This is a good transition from business model to customer experience. Now the customer, what do we do with the customer? What is the problem with the customer? The customer is always more empowered, always demanding more technology, demanding improvements, demanding this or that. And what we have seen in the past 10 years is that consumer focus is not an option. Okay, so let me talk about this again in just a few arguments. We have to listen obsessively to the customer. A lot of companies don't do this. A lot of companies don't pay attention to what's going on, and they miss a lot of clues that the consumers are sharing openly everywhere. Because if one thing has changed in the past 10 years is consumers have become completely outspoken about any flaw in your product, your company's offering, anything that's wrong. Okay, something's wrong, it's going to come out. So monitor everything being said about you, your product, your competition, your industry. Monitor absolutely everything. There are tools that help you do this. It's very good to keep an eye on them. It's very good to answer the customer. It's very good to take whatever feedback you get from your product, however bad it may be, and sending it to your product development team. Request proactive feedback. Do surveys, ask your users, be very open, have some kind of community for your company. It could be a Facebook group that is free. It could be something more elaborate, but get your users to talk to you, because you're going to gain incredible insights that are very, very valuable for the company. Analyze reactive feedback. And what does this mean? We can measure everything. Particularly if we do technology, we can measure everything. If we don't do technology, we can measure a lot of things. Okay. We can put analytics in. Now we can put beacons or cameras in stores, and they tell us where are the areas where people stop more and things like that. So for any physical or virtual experience, have all the possible metrics that can inform you about user behavior, because a lot of users are never going to tell you your product is failing. A lot of users are just going to walk out the door and never come back. A lot of users are just going to buy your product and not use it, or return it, or never use it. So you want to know why those people are frustrated. Maybe they were not the right people. So maybe your targeting is wrong. Maybe there's something wrong with your product. There's something wrong with your offering. And if you find out and you fix it, it's going to be great for you, because you're going to have a better product. I see a lot of companies doing this very, very well. And I see a lot of companies not doing anything about it. Guess who's going to stay in business? Okay. Particularly when you think about technology, this is absolutely necessary. And I still meet a lot of companies, developers, mobile apps that don't do any analysis of the usage of the app, don't do analytics. It's incredible. Okay, to still find that when the options are out there. A lot of the times they're free. You don't even have to pay a lot of money to get them. And monitor behavior across all possible touch points. And this is in relation with the previous points, but you want to analyze all the touch points that you have and how people use them, because maybe they make intensive use of one of your features or one of your products, and they don't pay a lot of attention to the others. So you can narrow down and perfect your offering. Okay, so you have to listen obsessively to the customer. That's one. Customer experience. This is one of those things that everybody talks about. Everybody's going to maybe have a customer experience manager in some places, and then the actual customer experience may be awful. Okay, so of course, if you do software, it's user experience mostly. Okay, all the interaction, the interfaces, and so on. If you do customer experience, you want to take a look at absolutely everything, and be consistent. So the level of quality your company offers has to be consistent across products and across services and across the whole offering of the company. If you fail on customer experience, I don't see how the company could survive. Okay, particularly now, because someone else is going to find the flaws in your product and is going to launch a better product. So there's a lot of innovation around customer experience. If you think about software, you see a lot of software companies that are trying to optimize customer experience through software development. And this is probably going to be completely data-driven. You're going to see a lot of improvements on many of these elements in the next few years. So, okay, what is one of the things that we've always talked to startups about in finding in finding success, okay, in general? Product market fit, okay? I'm sure you've heard of this one. You have to find your product market fit. That is going to take you through all these phases, the minimum viable product, the beta testing, the organic growth, scalability, but you have to find the market. Okay, yes, but not only that, okay? We want to start breaking down the market in order to understand where we can start to be successful. And it's not about the idea of the minimum viable product is fine. There's nothing wrong with it, as long as your minimal viable product is not crap. So what's the problem here? A lot of startups confuse minimum viable product with anything that works. And that doesn't work. Okay. So what you want to do is define what segment of the market is going to be interested in your product, and then developing a minimum viable product that has the features that that segment of the market is going to love. Okay. It's different from product market fit, because if you set out, so you have market size, the brand awareness, and conversion rate. If you set out to analyze your potential clients, you're going to find these customer types. Okay. I have a very good case from a fintech company that did exactly this. They identified the groups that would be interested in their product, and they developed an outstanding minimum viable product. Okay. It only had one part of the features, but it was fantastic for that small 5-10% of the market. So that's how you find your product market fit in a more organic way. Okay, you target group B. It's a small part of the market. Maybe they know your brand. Your conversion rate is going to be high. And then you target group C, which is the best opportunity. It's a market size medium. They are less aware, so the conversion rate is going to be lower, but you're going to be able to grow more organically. And if you have a loyal set of customers, they're going to speak on your behalf. They're going to recommend your product. If you ask them to recommend the product, they're going to do it. If you do a viral giveaway, they're going to participate. Okay. So you want to have a core set of users that are fascinated by your product in order to gain that exposure and that growth that you need as a startup to survive. So customer adoption spectrum. Okay. Moving forward from product market fit. And this goes to reinforce the 11th recommendation. Make your product irresistible. Make your product for the audience that you have developed it for. Okay. So there's a methodology called product-led growth. And basically what you do is you try to invest as little as possible in marketing, because the product is the promotional element. So you can do a freemium thing and give part of the software for free, or you can do such an incredible product that people are going to feel bad if they don't share how good it is with the rest of the world. Okay, so product-led growth is a recent methodology that aims exactly at doing that, developing that product that is fascinating for the user, and the product is the marketing. Okay, which I think, I have another idea further on around this, which is operations is marketing. Always use customer-centric methodologies for innovation. I don't think I have to insist too much on this one. I think many companies know about design thinking and are applying the design thinking methodologies. If it's not design thinking, it can be another thing. Okay, but it has to be a customer-centric methodology, because if it isn't, what's the point? Okay, the customer is going to see a product that is not ready for him. They're not even going to bother giving you feedback. Okay, So if you use one of these methodologies, you minimize the risk of screwing up when developing a product. And you still find a lot of companies and a lot of institutions and departments and that are not doing proper design thinking methodologies. They're not doing anything around this. So it's very frustrating to find people not using the optimal approach to developing something when it's clear that this is the way forward and it's unavoidable. Okay, so that is customer experience. Let's move on to organization and culture. Now, for me, of course, this is the absolutely crucial part of any digital transformation. Okay, when we talk about technology inside companies, it's always people, process, and technology. So people are crucial. If your people are not on board, if you don't have the right team to move on, if you don't have the right capabilities of those people, and if those capabilities do not evolve over time as the growth of the company needs it, you are doomed. And you see a lot of companies struggling with this. They don't have the right management. They don't have the developers with the right attitude. They don't have the salesmen with the right attitude. So how this plays out in traditional companies, you try to do digital transformation and you find an insane amount of resistance because we've always done it this way. Because who are these young kids coming to tell us how things should be? Because there's always an excuse not to change, okay? So in traditional companies, the only way to solve that sometimes is by changing the shape of the teams and getting rid of the people who don't want to embrace change or don't want to hear anything about change. In a startup, of course, that happens because you need to, I didn't want to put it on the slides because it's too aggressive, but if you're managing a startup, you need to hire quickly and fire quickly. And that's obviously that this is not the quote that I would like to have from the masterclass. Eduardo said, hire quickly, fire quickly. No, it's definitely not. I think you can find incredibly valuable people, and oftentimes you are surprised that you have incredibly qualified people inside the company. Okay, and they are quiet or they are introverted, and until you discover them, they're not going to do anything. They're just going to stay there or leave and never come back. But if you give them an opportunity, very often you find that they are incredible assets for the company. I've had this happen to me a number of times, and I was surprised to find people who were on the lower levels of the organization and that probably should be in management. Okay, so organization. First of all, if you're an organization and you're not measuring, what are you doing? Okay, what are you doing? Are you having meetings every day with your team, sitting endless hours in Zoom calls, running committees? What is it that you're doing? Because if you're not measuring, and here's the thing, this is like essential. You do an MBA, you talk about KPIs and OKRs or any other measurement methodology. And then you go out into the real world and nobody's measuring anything. Okay. I sit with companies, I sit with departments, I sit with government entities from places, and they're not measuring anything. So what are you doing? What is your job exactly? Do a meeting to follow up on something? Because you can put a robot to do that, okay? So it is super important to keep an eye on KPIs, have KPIs for everything. I think I have that on the next slide. And you can even embrace the methodologies of objectives and key results, which is the one that Google popularized. Okay, there's a book from the guy who implemented it at Google called Measure What Matters. Okay, and objectives and key results is a fantastic methodology for putting your team behind a vision of what objectives you want to achieve. And then you're going to have KPIs to measure the results if they are easily monitored. Okay. So for me, this is crucial. When I do the MBA programs, I do a lot of tribunals at the end of the MBA, and the students have a business model. They have a consulting project with another company. And I always tell them, where are the KPIs? What did you do in terms of KPIs? How are you going to measure this? And a lot of the times they don't do this effort. They don't develop anything in terms of KPIs, which is surprising. Okay. But also the people inside the department are going to always use the shield of saying, well, I know what I'm doing. I know that I'm doing well. Okay. But well against what? So most measurement plans that I've seen are underwhelming. You're not measuring the right things. And you have no way of assessing progress in your KPI strategy. KPIs are often neglected in multiple departments. So they are pretty obvious in certain areas. Okay, you do a mobile app, you do a website. Well, you have analytics. You can easily monitor the KPIs and have track of that. What about, I don't know, the financial department? What about human resources? Every department needs a set of KPIs. Okay, you can measure a lot of things that you didn't know you could in all these companies. So, and usually they change over time. Particularly if you're a startup, you're going to pay attention to certain things, and those are going to change over time because the scale of the company is going to change. Hopefully, you're going to grow, you're going to improve, and then the KPIs you have are no longer relevant. Continuous improvement, this 1% that you can improve every day or every week or every month, is impossible without KPIs. If you don't have anything to measure against, how are you going to perceive improvement? And just gut feeling doesn't cut it. Okay, it has to be measured. There has to be a number somewhere that lets you assess whether you are on the right track. If you want to build a system, and if you want to scale, you need a system. If you want to build a system, you need KPIs. So you need KPIs for scaling, for streamlining processes, particularly those that are repeated all the time. You want to measure all the processes that you repeat all the time. So that means that you can put KPIs practically on anything you do. You can put them in software development. You can put them inside the software. You can put them in practically anything you can think of. You're going to have KPIs. One of the things that surprised me when I started doing this 1% process is that suddenly we could measure things that we had never thought of, and they were important. So we were measuring the lag between your request for something from the database until the time it came back. Okay, think about this. The lag may be a few seconds, 2, 3, 4 seconds until you get a request. Start multiplying that by the number of queries you do to the database, which are thousands upon thousands every day, and start to quantify those 4 seconds that the database comes back to you. Start quantifying them, and you realize you end up saving an insane amount of man hours just by closing that and making those 4 seconds 0.1. Okay, so this is important. I used it with software, but you can apply it to many, many other things. And many startups live or die by this point alone. Okay, if you don't have analytics, if you don't have KPIs, that's not going to drive you anywhere. And I see a lot of startups that don't have KPIs and don't pay attention to KPIs in the way that they should, particularly when you have all these opportunities at the tip of your hand. And if you think about, I do a lot of work lately with NGOs. And NGOs, at the end of the day, they are organizations, they have a business model. okay? And they should not be, just because they are NGOs, they should not be perceived as, you know, the need for improvement, or the demands should be exactly the same as the traditional companies, and very often they're not, and they're not measuring anything. So a lot of startups live and die by this point alone. A lot of organizations are extremely inefficient because of this. Okay, another important idea, also in relation with the scalability. What got you here won't get you there. Okay, there's a book that is titled like that, and it means whatever the progression of your startup is, whether you're successful or you are struggling, if you want to take the next step, if you want to get to another point, you're gonna have to have different capabilities. Okay, the capabilities you need as a startup don't guarantee long-lasting success as you grow and mature. So this is very important. I think this applies to our lives as well, to our professional lives. So very often that means new capabilities and new organizational approaches. A lot of startups have a very loose organizational approach. They are horizontal, and that's all great. But at some point, if you grow, you're going to have to organize in a way that is more structured and more streamlined. So that those startups that have very horizontal approaches need to change, need to adapt. And some of these startups they embrace this way of working that is extremely horizontal, holacracy, for example, okay, where basically there's no management, everybody works in decentralized areas and so on. I think there's a lot of merit to the methodology, but I would not use it ever in a company. I think it's too difficult or too painful to use that. So I was saying before, listen obsessively to your customers. Well, listen obsessively to your employees. A lot of the times, management is not talking or not having the right conversations with the employees. Why? Because you can have an insane amount of feedback, very valuable feedback from employees. And this is something that surprised me because I did it very intuitively, okay, because I am a super introverted person. So the way that I behave very, very well is one-on-one. So I did a lot of one-on-one meetings since I started being management. And I found out a lot of things about how we could improve things for us and for the customer. So they're the same way we have customer experience, we have employee experience and team experience. So you want for those people to have the best working conditions available, because you are going to be asking a lot from them, particularly on a startup. I always tell my students to at least once in their lifetime work at a startup. Okay, why? Because I think you don't need an MBA. Okay, you do startup work for a couple of years. You're going to be exposed to all the parts of the business. It's going to be great, but you ask a lot from these people. So either you give them a proper employee experience, you make their lives as easy as possible in terms of the things they can do and the tools they can use and the working environment and everything related to that. Or these people are going to be frustrated and burnt out because they are working a lot, because on startups, you tend to work very, very intensively and a lot of hours. Okay, so employee experience for me is key as well. In relation with what we discussed before, okay, operations is marketing. And this is, again, a counterintuitive argument. You think of operations, you think about a production line, you think about an assembly line. How is that marketing? Because you need your product to be good, because you need your quality of service to be outstanding, because you need to have flawless customer interaction. And that means having the right customer representatives, because you need your organization to not have silos. What do I find usually in startups? What is the silo in a tech startup? Developers. Okay, developers, people who are native tech wizards. Okay, and they give everything to the developers, and they have no integration with the rest of the company, or it's the developers that rule the whole thing. Okay, run the place. So when we talk about no silos in the organization, generally in a startup, in a small startup, there's going to be no silos. And as you start to grow a little bit, you're going to find a lot of silos. So there was a methodology developed a few years ago, taking on this whole agile trend. Okay, the agile methodologies and the Scrum and all these methodologies for faster development and faster time to market. But someone realized, hey, if the guys in operations understand all of this, and when I say operations, I include practically every department inside the company. If the guys from operations understand all of this and give us the proper feedback and help us define how these things are going to play out, we can do a much better work at doing the agile methodology. So DevOps is one of those methodologies that you need to embrace in order to get the rest of the company on board and break any silos that you might have that might be hindering your capabilities. Okay, so you want to do that. There's fantastic books that explain the DevOps methodology and the agile methodologies. This one, the Project Unicorn, I think is one of them. They do it through a story, and it's very well explained. So if you identify this problem in your company, it means that you are not paying enough attention to operations. And operations is marketing, because if you have a bad interaction with a customer representative, that reflects badly on the brand and the company. And that client that is having a bad interaction with a customer representative is going to go on Facebook, Instagram, any other platform that they can talk about it and say these people are awful. Okay, so operations is marketing, and there are methodologies that help you have a better operational organization. Now, what are the constants of a startup? Constant number one, failure. No one gets it the first time around. Okay, it's very, very difficult to get it the first time around. If you do get the first time around, probably hubris. Okay, you're going to say, oh, wow, I control this. I'm going to be absolutely complacent with what I'm going to do next. So, and you're going to screw up. So the failure is a constant. You want to embrace failure. You want it to work for you. Okay. One of the cases that I'm using now for my courses is from booking.com, an online travel agent. I'm sure you know it. They do experiments all the time, and they fail at most of them. Okay, so they run experiments on user customer centricity. They have a hypothesis. They develop a solution. They monitor the results. They fail most of the time, but when they win big. Okay, when they find something that could bring, I don't know, 5 additional millions. Okay, at the end of the month, and they bring them, then it works great. And if you fail, well, you learn something. Okay, either that you didn't do the proper experiment, or that the user is not interested in whatever it is you're doing. So this goes to this growth mindset, fixed mindset. Okay, I'm sure you've heard of this concept, but you will find a lot of people that are fixed mindset. Okay, I've had this problem. I don't want to point fingers or anything, but I've generally had this problem with lawyers. Okay, and I can criticize lawyers because I am a lawyer. I studied law in college, so and my father's a lawyer, so I can say this. But usually you find a lot of fixed mindset in all these companies, and what you need generally is a growth mindset. Okay, failure is an opportunity to grow. Now that translate that for people. How do you hire people? You want to hire people with growth mindset. Okay. I think the hiring process is completely broken, by the way. I don't see any hiring system that works. I haven't seen it for a long time. But if I did hire people, I would focus on this, okay, on the growth mindset. Another constant for the organization, you learn as you grow. So learning is not optional, and this is a significant pitfall for startups. There's a big chance that you're going to screw up by not learning. And again, this applies to our lives as well. When hiring, look for people who are willing to be lifelong learners. And you find a lot of people everywhere. You find a lot of people that are just settled in, that are not passionate about what they do. Okay, and there's nothing wrong with that, as long as they don't work for you, and as long as the work that they do doesn't require them to have a growth mindset. Okay. And the final constant for a startup is adapting to the new challenges. You're going to find multiple challenges ahead, so you need to have the proper mindset in order to face the challenges that are coming. Okay, so I have 4 to go. We are 16. Let's talk a little bit about the tech factor. We can finish with that. And it's the last step, first of all, okay? You talk about digital transformation, and some people focus exclusively on the technology. For me, it's the last step. The technology is at the end, okay? And it's very difficult to talk about technology or what is going on with technology. We can point at trends. We can identify what's going on. So one big trend is artificial intelligence. We talked about this in the previous masterclass. Artificial intelligence is going to be huge. It's going to be incredibly subspecialized. We're going to see significant change in the next 20 years, and it's going to do amazing things. Okay, that's one trend. Let's talk a little bit about another element that is important. From big tech to deep tech. So big tech is this huge software technology companies that have basically ruled in the past decade. Okay, you have your Facebook, Google, Amazon, Apple, and Microsoft. Okay, the era of big tech is coming to an end. I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow. I don't know if it's going to be in 10 years. But what I do know is that the level of advancement we're going to see in technology doesn't allow those companies to tackle every other competitive threat. Okay, so that means big tech, as we know it, those 5 companies ruling the world, yeah, they're going to still be huge. They're going to still grow. They're going to still have, you know, incredible economies of scale and so on. But I don't think they're going to be. I think they're going to be the industrial giants of the internet. Okay, the petrol companies, oil companies in the first part of the 20th century. They were huge companies, had insane amount of power. They had to break them down because of it was a monopoly. We're going to look back and see, well, those were giant companies, but we're going to see a lot of startups taking advantage of deep tech. And what is deep tech? Well, it is a confluence. It is a convergence of technologies into solutions. And they are built on engineering, of course. They're going to be built on advanced science. So you see a lot of technologies converging here, like, I don't know, genomics. Genomics mixed with artificial intelligence, mixed with I don't know, whatever other discipline we might think of, or robots that are able to interpret their surroundings and respond to it. Okay, and are able to read your emotions and respond to it, and are able to look at different variables and help you through it. So we're going to have a lot more deep tech products, and those startups are out there. those startups are already working on things. We just have never heard of them yet. Okay, but deep tech is the way forward. And deep tech means convergence of multiple technologies that had not converged before. Okay, so this is one example from the Boston Consulting Group, and you see all the things that they are, all the technologies that are emerging: artificial intelligence, quantum computing, synthetic biology. I know nothing about synthetic biology. Okay, and still it's one of the things that is coming. Nanotechnology, next generation user experience, the blockchain that powers Bitcoin, but it's also being used for many other things: robotics, universal 3D printing, process automation for materials, new chemical development. These are things that fall out of the technology narrative, but require convergence of different technologies. And so when I talk about these companies, Google, the giants, not being able to keep up, it's because all of this is going to create incredibly subspecialized disciplines. Okay, you're going to have a company that specializes in quantum technology for genomics, and you're going to have an artificial intelligence that experiences on offering solutions only to a small part of the health industry. Okay, and so we're going to see a huge grade of specialization. A lot of companies are going to come in. A lot of startups are going to try to capitalize on this because the capabilities needed are being developed around the world. You see a lot more students studying artificial intelligence. So that means we're going to have a lot of talent in order to do that. And they're not going to want to work for the big giants. They're going to want to do their own startup. So we're going to have a huge influx of startups in the next 10, 15, 20 years that are going to do deep tech solutions and that are going to use this to collaborate with other companies. So you're going to see a lot of collaboration among startups and among startups and companies with all these individualized solutions. And eventually, probably out of that, some company will create a giant and start acquiring all those companies. But deep tech is one of the key trends we have to keep an eye on, because probably we're going to be talking about this 5 years from now. Like we used to talk about big data. In 2008, we were talking about big data, and nobody really talked about big data in the market until 2012. Okay, so 5 years, and everybody's going to be talking about deep tech. So, and deep tech also means that collaboration is not optional. What is the problem here? A lot of startups are very protective of their intellectual property, of their agreements, contracts with other companies. It seems like, yeah, they will collaborate only if I have to. And this is not the way forward. Okay, this wasn't the way forward when the internet started. At the beginning, there was an insane amount of collaboration. Now, not so much, but I don't think this is the way forward for startups in general. You're always going to have to innovate outside the company. You're always going to bring innovations from outside the company. And that means that in a startup ecosystem, you want to use all the sources of potential value at your disposal. And very often that means sitting down with the competition. Okay, when I did my third startup was on software development, and software development in a very specific area. Okay, in geographic visualization and geographic related information and so on. The first thing we did was we went to the United States. We stayed there for a few years developing projects. And the first thing we did when we got there was meet with all our competitors, all of them. Show them the product, show them what we did, have them show us their product, see if there were points where we could collaborate or not. And one great thing about the United States and the ecosystem, the startup ecosystem there, it is very open to this. So we could very easily meet with the whole industry without any problems at all, and we could collaborate. Why? Because first of all, there was a bigger enemy, which was the company that was ahead of us, the Microsoft of our industry, okay, that we had to compete with. So it was very useful to collaborate with other startups in projects, just in order to prevent the big guy from getting away with it. So for me, collaboration is key, and talking regularly with the competition is key. And it's something that, again, we can learn from the US because they have a lot of experience on this. And this is also the slide an image that I wanted to convey. This is the classic image of open innovation. Okay, and open innovation. We don't talk a lot about open innovation in the market nowadays because it has become commonplace. Everybody does open innovation. So when everybody does something, it tends to be lost on innovation. Okay, open innovation is actually now innovation. But this was a traumatic change for many companies to accept innovations from outside the company. Wow, no, that's unheard of. Okay, so now it's commonplace. Everybody's doing open innovation. Everybody takes technology or ideas or developments or even approaches from outside, and everybody embraces this way of collaborating. That's another reason why you don't hear about open source software anymore. I want to write an article about that, because back in the day we were talking about open source all the time, like we were the David against Goliath. Okay, and it turns out open source won the war. Everybody does open source now. Okay, open source conquered the world, and so we don't talk about it anymore because it conquered the world. But open source, the reflection of open source is open innovation. Okay, it's getting a bunch of people to develop a software that is then going to be made available to the whole market. But inside a company, you want to be open to outside innovation. Okay, I see a question here. Can you please provide an insight on how to balance open innovation versus implicit knowledge and core competency? Well, you don't want to outsource your core competencies, but I wouldn't outsource strategic issues for a company, but I would outsource all the rest. So those may be very small pieces, okay? In 2015, I did the launch and development of an open innovation startup, okay, called Enomotive, okay, from an IE student. And we used the IE resources to launch it. They are focused on industrial operations. So what they did was go to industrial operations company and say, what are small problems that could save you a ton of money? And so they gave us a lot of projects on things like how to protect cars from a snowstorm. Okay, a company that is selling cars and they have 400 cars sitting there for long periods of time, sometimes in the winter. What happens if there's a snowstorm or ice from instead of snow, ice? And the cars could be ruined. Okay, so we put it out there. We put the project out there. We get solutions from all different fields that have nothing to do with cars, okay, and have nothing to do with the car industry. Some of them are extremely ingenious, okay? Some of them are incredible. So they spend a little bit of money on the project, they get a solution, they save potentially millions, okay? And there are many, many other small projects that can definitely help out in companies, and that do not attack your core competencies or your implicit knowledge. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with bringing things from outside, as long as they are not strategic issues. Okay, the benefit of what could be the benefits of sitting with competitors? You want to learn from them. What's more important than that? Of course, they're gonna also learn from you, but you know, nothing is free. You want to learn from them. You want to understand what their product is like. You want to understand what the feeling is like. So the first thing we do was meet with a startup that was a leading startup in our field, but they were not a big company by any stretch of the imagination. And we went there. We went to their offices, and we saw that they had a dog in the office. Okay, and we interacted with the CEO, and we saw exactly how they worked and what they did. So the only thing it brought us was insight into what they could do and possibilities for collaboration, because we were not direct competitors. Yeah, we did a product that was practically the same, but we aimed at completely different sets of clients. Okay, so they were not really our competition. That's one of the things that we found out, that they were not really our competition. So you know, it's worth keeping an eye on that. And Jalal is saying, do you think that hiring quick and firing quick could affect the company reputation in attracting talent? Yes, it could. The question is, do you want to perceive positively, or do you want to have a startup that works? Because the problem with hiring quickly and firing quickly is, if the employee doesn't fit in the organization, it's not going to help you create value. It's going to help you destroy it. Okay. And we should normalize firing someone. There's nothing wrong with firing someone. And if you are able to explain this in the proper way, you know, I think that we should normalize people getting fired. Why? Because sometimes it's a cultural element. There's not a culture fit. You don't fit inside a company. You are never going to fit, and probably hiring you was a mistake. Okay, because of that. So it could be hire slowly and fire quickly. Hire slowly. Sometimes you hire slowly and you get the same quality of people. Okay, I've seen companies take an insane amount of time in getting a new, I don't know, sales manager, a new managing director, and they were fired within 6 months. Why? Because they were not a proper fit. If they are a fit, you're going to see it right away. Okay, it's not rocket science finding the right fit. Sometimes you're going to screw up. We have all screwed up when hiring people, but you know, there's nothing wrong with that. And the problem is that in some places getting fired has a stigma, and it shouldn't have. Okay, so you talk about the effect it could have on the market, a small market like Jordan. Okay, but you know, if you part on good terms, which is what every company should do and try, there's nothing wrong with it. Okay. Okay, I was answering here. Let me finish, because we are about, I wanna finish on time. So what is the final? So we finished with the technology. Okay, what is my final recommendation? And it has a lot to do with this. I'll answer the questions as soon as I finish. My final, we're gonna watch the second video after this. My final recommendation: when politics come through the door, good management goes out the window. Okay. And again, I've seen this a lot of times. You get a manager, a CEO that is very political. Nobody's going to want to stay there. Okay. Nobody's going to want to stay at a company where politics runs the place. And if you're a startup, the company's doomed. Okay. Related to this, Michael Dell, a while ago, a few years ago, a couple of decades ago, he said, hang your ego at the door. Okay. And this is, for me, I can tell you, this is something that took learning. Okay. Because I have opinions. I'm opinionated. I speak my mind. Okay. So I had to learn to leave my ego at the door. Hang your ego at the door then go in. But don't, if you take things personally, chances are it's going to evolve into politics. Okay, so I never take attacks personally. I never take anything that could create a bad light on my department personally. I just try to argue against those positions. Okay, but I now I hang my ego at the door. You can tell me anything. Okay, I'm a rock. It's no problem in telling me anything. I'm going to take that. I'm going to use it, but hang your ego at the door. So my final advice is do not ever let politics through the door. If you do, good ideas will take a back seat. And a lot of, I say this to my students, a lot of them think or tell me, well, it's pretty difficult to not have politics when you're a big company. And it is. I mean, there's always going to be someone doing politics and trying to outmaneuver someone. That's going to happen. But you want to avoid it as much as possible. And you don't want to reward those behaviors. Okay. And if you have a lot of politics, good ideas are going to take a backseat. And I have seen this because I grew a company from very little. We had the first startup that I did. We started with very little. We got funding. We grew over the course of 10 years, and I was on top management there. And eventually, it devolved into a lot of politics. But we lost agility. We completely lost agility. We couldn't respond to the market as the market needed it. And that was very frustrating. Okay, so that's my final advice. And I want to show you the last video. It's Tim Cook. It's Tim Cook being asked what they look for when they're hiring people. And I thought the answer was absolutely spot on. Okay.
Look for in terms of what you think will produce effective collaboration, and what's your role as CEO in fostering that kind of collaboration?
You look for people that are not political, people that are not bureaucrats, people that really don't care who gets credit, people that can privately celebrate the achievement, but not care if their name is the one in the lights. You know, that there are greater reasons to do things. You look for wicked smart people. You look for people who appreciate different points of view. You look for people that care enough that they have an idea at 11 at night and they want to call and talk to you about it because they're so excited about it and they want to push the idea further, and that they believe that somebody can help them push the idea another step instead of them doing everything themselves. You know, I've never met anyone, at least in my life, maybe they exist, that could do something so incredible by themselves. You know, in companies with global footprints and in our world, in Apple's world, the reason Apple is special is that we focus on hardware, software, and services, and the magic happens where those three come together. And so it's unlikely that somebody that's focused on one of those in and of themselves can come up with magic. And so you want people collaborating in such a way that you can produce these things that can't be produced otherwise. And you want people to believe in that.
Okay. So that's my final thought. And I think the video is a fantastic example. First of all, you can compare Steve Jobs with Tim Cook. Tim Cook is like the introverted, quiet guy. Steve Jobs was much more outspoken and much more passionate when he talked. but he's a great manager. Tim Cook has done great things for Apple, and I saw that video. That's from 2012. Okay, so he was recently CEO, and he was fantastic. Very clear ideas of how things should be in a company if you want to be successful. So politics, no politics. That's for me, that is key. Okay, so I have some questions here from Abir. I hope that's how you pronounce it. Could you elaborate on friction and how platforms capitalize on our existence as a startup? So generally what a platform does is they get two sets of people, or three or four sets of people. Some of them are providers, some of them are clients, some of them are content creators, some of them are advertisers. Okay, Facebook, it is us creating the content for Facebook. If there was no content, nobody would want to put advertising on Facebook. So that is the classic example of a platform. But you see platforms everywhere that are trying to do all kinds of things, like make transactions between companies better. Okay, you see the Amazon Marketplace or AliExpress or any of those platforms. What they do is get buyers, thousands and thousands of buyers, to millions and millions of buyers. Thousands of sellers to millions and millions of buyers. And so they remove friction, because otherwise for you, it would be impossible to find those products or those providers. And they create this aggregated platform. You have all the products and clients in one place, and you are able to make more efficient decisions, because all the players inside the platform are selling their services, and some compete with one another, and reduce friction because they take care of the messy stuff. Okay, the payment system, for example, the messaging systems between the different sellers and buyers. You can talk directly to your provider in Alibaba. So they remove friction. Any platform removes friction. If you analyze Uber, for example, Uber is one of the great platforms that happens in the real world with physical stuff. Okay, how do they remove friction? You have an app that lets you do everything. Okay, you get your taxi, you get them, you monitor where they are, you get on the street, you don't even have to say hi. You just open the door, get in, you don't pay. It's a friction removal, fantasia. So they do great because they remove friction. Now, think about what could happen in whatever your market is. I don't know what your market is, but whatever your market is, who is your platform, if there is one, or who could create a platform and how? And maybe it's you that wants to create a platform. Okay, I had a student a few months back. He was going to work on digital transformation of a company that does something in agriculture, and they wanted to create a platform. They themselves wanted to become the platform, because they thought, if we don't do it, someone else is going to do it. Okay, so friction is imperfect information sometimes. It's just the fact that we don't have all the information at our fingertips, and we want to get that information. And if we want to get that information, a platform can help us overcome that problem. Any recommendations about reactive feedback metrics for an emotion AI-based startup? Wow, that's a tough one. I would have to think about that one before I gave you an answer. But you definitely, you have to, first of all, you have to know when you have false positives or false negatives. When is the system failing and why? And get a sample as big as possible that gives you all the information about where the system is failing, and that will help you improve and refine the algorithms that you have for emotion identification, if that's what you're worried about. But probably we could talk about this further in a future meeting. If there's only one thing to share advice, a deep tech emotion AI, I think we're going to leave that for the meeting. I think I would have to look further into your business model, and I'd be happy to do it. Okay. is there a recommended scalability strategy for startups? There are multiple ways you can do scalability. It depends on what your startup does. Because if your startup relies on investing on an asset, so that means in order to scale, you need to buy more and install more, and that means more expenditures, capital expenditure. You need to be very careful about how you expand, because chances are you're not gonna put the right elements in the right places, and that is mismanagement and wasting money. If you are a software company or if you are an e-commerce company, you need to have the proper information systems in order to scale. If you're a company that is going to rely a lot on customer support, to give an example of something that is difficult to scale because it depends on people, maybe you need to outsource. Okay, things that may not be critical activities for you can be outsourced, and that way you can more easily scale on areas that are going to require a lot of commitment from employees. Okay, does that answer your question?
Yeah, Eduardo, thank you for your answer. Actually, it gives a nice, let's say, overview, but if you can share a kind of documentation that could help us to identify the best strategy for scalability, or if you have any source that we can read more about it, I would appreciate it. Okay.
There's a book from the CEO of LinkedIn called Blitzscaling.
Blitzscaling.
I recommend reading it.
Can you help with that, Dr. Yazan, if you have a link or reference?
I can put the Blitz.
Oh, please do.
Blitzscaling. Very good book. There are more. There's one from it's an old classic. It's I think it's something like High Output Management. And it was written in the 1990s, probably.
Oh, that's for scalability as well?
Yeah, probably you can find it. You can find it somewhere, and it's a reference for many startups. Okay, so it's High Output. I don't know if it's Andy Grove. I don't remember the exact names, but
no problem.
Okay, Jalal is asking. Yeah, absolutely. Jalal is asking, can you define ego in business? When I talk about ego, I talk about your personal ego. I don't talk about the business. Okay, I talk about your ego. We all have one. There's nothing wrong with it, but it doesn't play well in business. And you see a lot of executives that have a strong ego, and that can get in the way of solutions. And I'm not saying ego is wrong. There's nothing wrong with it, and unless you are a complete narcissist. I'm saying try to watch things from outside of you, okay? That happened to you, because otherwise you're going to make it personal, and then you're going to be frustrated, and you're going to be resentful, and things are going to go bad, and politics, okay? All of that leads to politics. So that's what I talk about when I talk about ego. Okay, you have the links here to both books, okay? High Output Management. It probably is not so much about scalability. Blitzscaling, definitely. Probably you can find other books as well that deal with this topic. Of course, the classics on the lean startup and things like that, they address this problem. Depending on the shape of your company, depending on what you're doing, depending on what activities you need to be scaling, you're going to have one solution or another. Okay, but this is a problem, particularly if you sell software. Even creating the client side of business sometimes is so difficult that many companies don't do it, and they end up doing business to business software implementations that do not scale. Okay, that has become easier with cloud computing, but still you find companies that are unable to take the leap to a platform or a a software as a service solution. Okay. Great. You have a spreadsheet with all the things I mentioned. Actually, if I had put a bibliographic reference for this short presentation, probably it would have been like 15 or 20 books. So I think maybe that's too much. Okay. But I think it's a good overview of digital transformation. What?
Sorry to interrupt you, Eduardo, but a couple of startups were sending me privately if whether they can book a session with Eduardo separately. So yeah, sure you can, guys, in case you're wondering. You can, and we'll arrange the logistics with Eduardo to see possible slots in his schedule.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
No
Eduardo, muchas gracias. Amazing journey. I think it opens more doors than closes doors.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of I really liked the tactical approach, but then it really maintained that high level perspective, because every startup is particular. Every business model is unique. And every market is different. Even if you have the same business model, won't probably work in all markets. So, I think one of your undercurrents is really to be agile by iterating, by experimenting. And I really liked the idea that technology, when you think about digital transformation, everybody's like, yeah, what tech do we buy, or what tech do we acquire, or what? I really liked how you placed technology at the end of the conversation, because technology is not the end, it's the means to an end, and you need to figure that out, looking holistically at the business, at the market, at all the dynamics, and know, what certainties you have about your assumptions, right? And the more you can de-risk those assumptions and validate through cheap experiments, which is as well a pillar for the entire program. Like, we want startups to, not just say, oh, this is a great pitch and, this is great potential. For us, it would be more valuable if they tell us, yeah, we think this, and then we did 4 experiments and these were the results. Exactly. Because that's how you would iterate. I do have one question, Eduardo, with regards to deep tech versus big tech, right? A lot of the startups we see, built into their strategy is they want to position themselves to be acquired by one of the big techs.
Yeah.
So there's this kind of driver towards more consolidation, but then yes, there is more sub-specialization. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
About being acquired. Well, creating a company to be acquired. Okay, let me go back to my first startup. Okay, year 2001, and we got funding from a huge venture capital in Spain, the biggest that there was in Spain at the time, and it was great. We acquired some companies, we set out to do business, and so on. Now, what was the problem I had, and I still have with venture capital, is when they buy a company, when they invest in a company, they are already thinking on the way out. Okay, they are already thinking, who am I going to sell this to, and for how much? And there's nothing wrong with that. That's their business model. I'm not attacking that. But the pressure they put on the company to do things in a certain way can be detrimental to the value that company creates. So it's great if you want to be acquired, but I wouldn't let that get in the way of building a sustainable business model. So I want to set out to build the best product I can and eventually bring it to the market. And if somebody buys me along the way, that is fantastic. Okay, but I wouldn't say I'm creating my company to be acquired by Facebook. If that's your whole value proposition, well, I'm sure you have incredible capabilities, but but I don't see many elements of value that could contribute to develop an incredible product, because at the end of the day, you're going to be acquired, or you want to be acquired. So you just do what you can to impress whoever's going to buy you. So, and we had that problem with all this venture capital money, because they wanted us to focus on growth. And we focused so much on growth at the beginning that we ended up losing money for a long time. And they seemed to be fine with it until they weren't. Okay. So at one point, the financial crisis hit, and suddenly it was, oh, remember what I told you about growth? Forget it. Now it's all profit. Okay, then I have to fire a bunch of people. I have to get rid of all these things that I did before in order to grow. Okay, so you don't know how things are going to play out. Set out to build the best business you can. And if you get acquired, that's fantastic. That is awesome. Now, another option appears on the horizon, which is deep tech. And deep tech, I don't think deep tech companies are too worried about being acquired or not being acquired. They're just setting out to do very, very specific and solve very specific problems in very specific fields with an incredibly complex problem. Okay, mixing artificial intelligence with robotics, with whatever else, that is complex enough. So I don't know. I think that the way forward is that today, these companies, these big tech companies, are still buying hundreds of startups every year. That is our reality today. I don't know what is going to happen next year, because next year we could see things change dramatically in the financial markets, and we're already seeing a lot of tensions going on with inflation, with stockage of microchips. There's not enough inventory for products. The outcome of the COVID pandemic is going to be extremely interesting for business. So I don't know what's going to happen next year.
Great advice. Thank you, Eduardo. So if nobody has any other questions or comments to finalize, I think next steps is if you could please do the evaluation. The form is on the chat, and by end of day today or maximum tomorrow, we will have the PDF slides for you in the shared folder. And obviously the recording will be on our YouTube channel. Eduardo, this has been fantastic. Very happy that you are part of this program, and also very excited for you to meet some of our startups. I think Abir will definitely schedule a session with you soon. Sarah will coordinate that, and we will again check with your schedule. So we're very happy to also take those deeper dives on matters that are more specific to individual startups. So thank you all for your attendance. Do share what you learned today with your teams. Ultimately, that's one way to integrate it, to embody it, and by sharing it, you're working on your culture, right? So and working on your people. So thank you all very much, and see you in the next masterclass.